If there's one thing we can all agree on, is that finance professionals are very good historians. Yeah, they're very good historians. They can tell you exactly what happened last month, last quarter, and last year in figures, of course. But very few are allowed or know or are equipped to shape what happens next. And that's the difference. It's the difference between recording history and shaping decisions. It's the difference between organizations that survive and those that scale. So today I wanted to talk about that shift because from my experience, real growth really does not come from the history and the spreadsheets. It comes from better financial conversations. So in many nonprofits, finance is usually positioned as a back office function. That's the signature positioning that most organizations put finance into. So what do we do when we are put in that back office space? Of course, we close the books because that's our mandate. We submit reports as required. We respond to audit queries, and we explain variances after decisions have already been made. And slowly, without knowing, we actually become reactive. But one thing I've learned is that scaling organizations need something different. They need finance to move upstream from reporting what happened to actually informing what should happen next. And this is the shift that will change everything. It changes the leadership confidence. It also changes the donor trust. It changes how risk is understood and managed, and ultimately, it changes the impact of the organization. So I've learned this over 2 decades working in nonprofit financial reporting and leadership across local organizations, regional nonprofits, and global institutions. And this is also across donor-funded programs, complex grants, and also very compliance-heavy environment. And one pattern has been very consistent. The organizations that struggle are not always the ones that are underfunded. They are the ones that are underinformed. So you find that their finance teams are technically competent, and I will repeat this. I have worked with some of the very competent finance professionals, but they're strategically underutilized. They are actually very strategically underutilized. Meanwhile, for the organization that scale, they invite finance into decision making earlier, not to block ideas, but to shape them responsibly. This is where now finance actually becomes a growth partner and not a goalkeeper. So let me just say this. Scaling fails not because organizations lack money, but because they lack the financial clarity that they need to spearhead their decisions. So when leaders don't fully understand the true cost of programs, the sustainability of the funding models that they're running, the long-term implications of the short-term decisions, then they end up making choices that look bold at the moment, but fragile over time. So finance cannot fix this by producing longer or many reports. This is fixed by producing clearer insights that facilitate decision making. So there are 3 shifts that must happen when finance stops recording history and starts shaping decision. Number 1 is that there must be a shift from compliance to context. Compliance definitely answers the question, did we follow the rules? And that is key, and that question must always be answered at all times. But on the other hand, context answers a more powerful question. Context answers the question of, does this decision still make sense given where we are going? So it's very, very important to understand the function of the two questions, compliance and context. Second, there must be a shift from budgets as limits to budgets as strategy. So what does this mean? That budgets are not just spending controls. They are value statements. They give value to the intervention that we are proposing. They show what leadership truly prioritizes, not what is written in the strategic plan. So that shift, you must be able to get that shift immediately at the planning, during the planning time, tying your budgets to your strategy and to your priorities. Then the third shift that I know must happen is that we must shift from variance explanations to forward-looking signals. Instead of asking, why did we overspend? We should actually be asking, what is this trend telling us about the next 6 months? Or what changed in the delivery? Because this is the decision that's shaping finance. Waiting to ask for why did you overspend does not help, because it is after the fact decision. But what we are looking for is before fact decisions. How can we use variance analysis as a before fact decision rather than an after fact decision? So growth, as you know, will actually amplify your weakness. More programs mean more complexity. More donors mean more reporting requirements. More staff mean more financial risk, and also the leverage, the staffing leverage on the organization, fixed costs for that matter. So if finance systems were designed only for reporting history, they collapse under growth. But when finance is structured around clarity, integration, and insight, it becomes an enabler of scale and not a bottleneck. And this is why many organizations actually plateau. Not because the mission is weak, but because the financial architecture was never built for growth. And even when the growth happened, nobody stopped to assess that as we grow into programs, do we have the correct financial infrastructure to take us there, or do we need to circle back and actually look at what is our next in terms of financial systems? And so looking at all these parameters and learning from different organizations in different status, this is exactly why I created the reporting clarity framework. Because over the years I realized something, that finance teams weren't failing because they lacked effort. They were failing because they lacked a clear reporting system that connects numbers to decisions. So the reporting clarity framework that I have put together sees the financial position at a glance. It helps to understand the funder and the board expectations early, and also align reporting with strategy and not just compliance. And finally, to build a finance system that will scale with the organization based on those principles. And I've now turned this into a self-paced training course designed for non-profit leaders, finance professionals, and senior managers who want finance to become a strategic asset and not an administrative burden. So if you are CEO, if you are an executive director or a board member listening to this, here is my challenge to you. You should actually stop asking finance teams only for reports, but you should actually start asking them for the insight. Invite them into planning conversations early. Ask what assumptions your strategy is built on, and ask what financial risks are invisible but growing. And if you are a finance leader, your responsibility is not just accuracy, is courage. The courage to speak up, the courage to translate numbers into meaning, and the courage to position as a decision partner. Organization scale, remember, when finance stops recording history and starts shaping decisions. When clarity replaces confusion, when insight replaces reaction, and when finance earns its seat at the strategy table. If this message resonates with you and you want to strengthen your organization's financial clarity and credibility, I encourage you to explore my reporting clarity framework training. The link to the training will be in the comment section of this video, because growth should be intentional and finance should help lead the way. Thank you for listening.